Well, Zach is awful kind to me because really I begged him to let me do this. Y'all are an experimental group is what's happening here. I quit preaching about 7 years ago for a couple different reasons, or really 8 years ago. And wasn't sure what I was going to do after that. So I went to work doing hospice work, being a hospice chaplain. And then about a little over a year and a half ago, I had opportunity to fill in at a congregation, which started out as 2 months, and then ended up a year and a half. So then finally I was able to move out of that. So what I've decided to do, because I'm not sure preaching is the position for me. So I've decided to start my own speaking business. In other words, public speaking, and I needed a forum to kind of begin that in. And so this is what this is about. This forum, and Zach is videotaping this, so he's going to do all the proper editing and everything so that I can get it on the website. And I've got a staff. I don't have it up and running. I have it made. I just haven't put it out there yet. So that I can get some things taken care of. I do hope that what I'm about to tell you is going to be in a book form. And so let me just begin. Everyone has a story. So what I want to do is I want to share my story and then kind of break that up a little bit as we go along. And at any point in time, I will, if somebody wants to say something, you want to interject something, because what I'm going to be sharing with you is kind of a straw man. You understand what that means? In other words, we could take some stuff out, we could put some stuff in. If you don't feel that would work with other teen groups, if you don't feel that would work with other adults, and it'd be kind of good if you told me real quick tonight, because tomorrow I'm speaking in Columbus, so this would be handy if we could get this done. I'm just going to anyhow. I was born on December 10th, 1965, and fortunately, I was an only child. I grew up, my father was an alcoholic. I tell people that I didn't know my father drank until I saw him sober one time. And he was the kind of person that, as you're growing up, and you'll say, my dad can beat up your dad. I don't know if kids do that anymore these days. They do that anymore these days? But kids, when I grew up, would say stuff like, they wouldn't tell me that because their fathers were afraid I'd go home and tell my dad. And my dad was the kind of person that he would go look somebody up. He just has no sense about him. I mean, I'm saying this, it's good now, because about 5 years ago, God dropped a bulldozer on him, literally. He was doing construction work. He's 75 this year. So when he was 70, a bulldozer rolled over on top of him and pinned him under it. And during that time, he had some great awakening, which was good. He quit drinking, and he's gotten better in his presentation to life. He claims that him and God are on good terms now. I believe it, because my dad never told me that he loved me. He now says, I love you too. He don't say son or anything like that, but we're making forward progress. And so with all of that said, it's kind of understandable that one time when I came home from elementary school, and as I got off the bus, I knew my mom's car wasn't there. So when I went in the house, everything in the house was gone. And what had happened was my mother had moved out. As soon as I left for school, what I was told later on in life was that as soon as I left, a U-Haul van had backed into the house and she loaded up everything and left. So I didn't see her anymore until after I joined the military, and then finally I went and looked her up, and all I wanted to know was why. I mean, I understood why she left, because on several occasions my father and her and I would have to hide. We would hide out in the field until he'd come home at night, because we knew he was going to be drinking. And here's the kicker: he drove a tractor and trailer. We owned our own trucks, and so he would come in at nights in the truck, drunk. And so we'd hide in the fields, and then he decided, for whatever reason, to start driving through the fields. So we had to move our hiding place. And so it was understood. I'd seen my father do terrible things to my mother. He would chase us and do all kinds of stuff. And so when she left, I understood that. But when I went to talk with her, 10 years later, 12 years later, and she said that if I would have taken you with me, he would have followed us. So by leaving you there, he wouldn't follow me. Okay? So things like that kind of weigh on you a little bit, So you kind of start learning some things. So one of the things that I learned is I'm just going to jump into some of the points. Some of the things that I learned was, do not let someone else decide the conclusion for your life. In other words, because of those circumstances, it was almost inevitable what my life was going to be like. Everybody had judged that I was either going to be in jail or the graveyard, one or the other. I had no place else to go. So these are the places I was going to end up. And it wasn't long after that I did follow somewhat in my father's footsteps. I did become quite the alcoholic. I tell people that alcohol makes me break out in handcuffs and hospital beds. You know, it's one of those things that it just don't mix well. So with those thoughts in mind, so what I heard one day as I was getting ready to go into high school, I heard my family on my father's side. I was staying different places. I tell the kids all the time, well, sometimes we'll have children come to our house and I feel sorry for them because sometimes they don't have no place to go. In other words, their home isn't a place they want to be, so they like staying at our house. And so when they stay at our house, and I understand that. I remember staying at a friend of mine, Jeff Batten's house, and you know, it became some time when they'd have to ask me to leave. you know, I could hear them talking, the mother and father, or finally the father would just come out and say, "You got to go home." You know. So during this time, as I was growing up, my dad worked out of town. I lived by myself most of the time. I ate my dinners in a bar every night. The school bus would drop me off in front of a bar called Keller's Bar, and my dad had a running tab there, so I would go in and I would eat dinner there every evening. And I would walk home, and he'd come in on Friday nights. That's where he would go first to pay the tab, and then move on there. So I was spending this time with different places and with my family, and so one night they thought I was asleep. So it was probably 5 or 6 different family members that were there, and they were talking, and I heard them talking, and this is what they were doing. They were taking bets on what was going to happen to me. Not taking bets in a positive way, and what can we do to make life better? You know, like we're sitting here tonight. Our whole goal and aim is to make each other's life better. You see, it's not to make each other worse. You wouldn't expect to get together and somebody's going to run you down or ridicule you or talk bad about you or embarrass you. That's not what you expect. You expect each other to lift each other up, have some fun, and enjoy life together, so that you can learn that there is a good side to life. And so as I listened to them talk, I'd already seen that they had already planned the conclusion for my life. They'd already decided exactly what I was going to be. Nothing. They'd already said that I was going to end up in jail. There was no way I was going to make it through high school, you see. And myself had already had doubts about that. And so oftentimes in life, and you're going to find this growing up, I find it even now as an adult. I find it now even with my interaction with my own father still. He still tries to decide the conclusion for my life. You know, here's what you're going to end up being. Here's what's going to end up happening to you, you see. And so don't let that happen. You know, if somebody's got some good positive dreams for you, listen to that. Well, why not listen to that? Follow it, don't follow it. But the point is, usually people that try to decide your conclusion isn't good. They're usually trying to bring you down to somewhere where they're at, or even lower if possible. And so those types of things is what I would try to avoid. And as I began to think about these things, this is what I began to wrestle with. Because C.S. Lewis said that every part of the universe, every bit of it, every split second, he says, is claimed by God. But he also said that it's also claimed by Satan. And so we know that there's this battle going on all the time, right? The reason why we're talking and why we got to keep talking has to do with the fact that man is the weak link. You see, you understand what I'm saying? Man is in mankind, and all of us together. And all of us constantly need some type of bolstering, some type of lifting up, some type of help from time to time, right? I mean, have you ever dealt with anything like that? Have you ever got down and even yourself did not want to reach out to anybody else? But knowing good and well, that's what you need. You have to reach out to somebody. And certainly when you got a group like this, it makes it that much better. And so as I began to listen to this, it gave me some hope that I could do better. And so this is what I began to strive for. And so as I began to strive for that, as I moved closer to graduation from school, my dad told me one day, he said, listen, he said, I'll either feed you or I'll clothe you, but I won't do both. What's that? Well, that's his invitation to leave. Just as soon as you graduate, leave as soon as you can. So what did I do? Well, of course, we graduated, I guess, into May, 1st of July. I don't know exactly what it was, doesn't matter. But prior to that, these recruiters came to my high school. Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines came to my high school, and they began to tell me what all they could do. And all I could hear was, we'll feed you, we'll clothe you, we'll give you a place to live. Hey, we'll even give you a few jingles in your pocket. We'll pay you something. I'm like, sign me up. That's exactly, this is in February. My dad had no idea this was happening. I'd already turned 18, nothing to do about it. So I signed up with the military. Again, I'm not the brightest person. And so when I talk about life, I talk about life this way. I'm more like an operator. In other words, has anybody ever heard of the Blue Angels? Okay, the Blue Angels, you know, has these elite Navy jet pilots. And now they just recently added their first female jet pilot. And this is pretty awesome. I was watching an interview the other day. But those pilots are operators. If you take Blue Angels jet pilot and you give him a hammer and a jet engine, you know what you get? A broken engine. Those guys are operators. They operate that aircraft. They fly that aircraft. So when it comes to life in the Bible, that's basically what I do. There's theologians, there's all these folks out there that can give you 17 points on how to pray properly, you know, the 16 secrets, you know, to how to reach God. I don't know. I don't get into those things. I don't look those up. I don't figure those out. But I know this much. I know what works and what doesn't work. I know how to take something and work with it, and that's what I do. And so in this life today, as I began to prepare for this process, when it came down to July 3rd of 1984, I asked my dad for one ride, just one more ride, and that was to the bus station. You want me gone? Just take me to the bus station. So my dad drove me to the bus station in Waynesboro, Virginia, and he said, where are you going? I said, I'm leaving for the Army. Yeah, no idea what was happening. So I boarded the bus there, and on the 4th of July of 1984, I raised my hand and joined the United States Army. And so, again, back to the recruiters. Thinking about the recruiters, I was a recruiter's dream. What do you want to do? I don't care, I just got to get out. And so thought I was going in as a truck driver. I ended up in field artillery. Once I got out of field artillery, they put me in combat heavy engineers. So I just kind of went wherever. It didn't matter, just as long as I was going. So during that time, I began to learn a few things about the world, and the world has changed a lot. We live in a world today that has basically two attitudes. And I'm telling you, if you don't get a grip on these two attitudes, because these are what are ruling the world today. These attitudes are no shame. Have you ever noticed this? Nowadays, things have gotten so bad that we cut out cable or TV, things like that, not for the TV shows, but for the commercials. I mean, that was us. You know, it used to be we could control the TV shows and wasn't worried about the commercials. Now it's gotten worse. And so anyhow, that's us, and it doesn't matter. But there's no shame in the world today. I mean, the stuff that goes on, the stuff that happens. You know, you see these videos all the time on YouTube, Facebook, all these different places where somebody's getting beat up and somebody's just standing there filming it. They're not helping them. They're not assisting anybody. They just think it's a good idea just to videotape it or anything like that. And so in the world today, I say within our culture, it's no shame. In the rest of the world, the other attitude that's prominent out there is intimidation. Is that not true? I mean, is there anything in the world today that you can think of that's being passed around and the whole process is intimidating? Can you think of something? ISIS comes to mind for me. I mean, when you go out and take 200 Christians and you cut their heads off, is that not intimidation? That's intimidation. That is, you're going to do what I'm telling you you're going to do. And so now in the world today, everything is being moved by intimidation. Who can intimidate who? And this is what's happening. And so I learned these things as I went on. I did end up, when I ETS back to the States, I ended up getting married. And that marriage didn't last long. I attribute some of it to the military, that maybe the military and that doesn't work together. I don't know. I reach for all kinds of excuses. But because of that marriage, I did end up with 2 sons, Daniel and Jonathan. And so throughout this time, I didn't have contact with my mother anymore. I wasn't that much in contact with my father anymore. Matter of fact, even when I came back to the U.S. and I was going to buy my first vehicle, and because I was young and had never bought a vehicle, I called my dad to come co-sign for a Toyota pickup for me. And he said no, he wouldn't do it. So I called his brother. His brother came and did it for me. So that kind of tells you how the animosity kept going. And I never could figure out how somebody could be mad at me for something I never did, you see. But this is also the world. We deal with these things today. You're going to run into people that's going to be angry with you and you haven't done nothing. This is just the way it is. It goes back again, I think, to this intimidation factor. Is what I think happens quite a bit. And so with that in mind, so we go through life, and so it did not work out very well. And I will tell you, I wasn't a Christian. I didn't always do Christian things. I didn't act the way I should act. And you know, at this point right now, I would just say I envy you guys. You have the best footing and the best start in life. You already have a foundation that you can build on and make it better. You know, and all of us can do that. Because I didn't get to understand and become a Christian until I was 29, and I'll get to that in a minute. But with those thoughts in mind, we ended up having two sons, Daniel and Jonathan, and then 8 years later, ended up divorced. I didn't know what I was going to do. Once again, this is kind of it seems to be my lot in life somewhat until the sergeant major. I call my wife the sergeant major, or my rib. It just depends on what day it is and if I'm in trouble or not. But anyhow, I come home from work and everything's gone. So it's like deja vu all over again, you know. Everything's gone from the trailer we had, and this was on a Friday. And of course, I try to contact my dad, and things kind of go hazy until Monday. After I get off work on Monday, I check the mail, and in the mailbox is already a subpoena to court. Something had already been in the process for a little while, because that takes some time. And so anyhow, so this is the way things goes. After that, I was living in my car for a while. I was driving a concrete truck doing construction work and some things like that. And then one day I was driving the concrete truck, and I heard this beautiful voice come over the radio. And it was my wife, Terry. Well, not my wife then, but Terry Skillman. And so I thought, I must go to the front office and see this woman. That sounds so pretty. So I would come in from driving, and I'd go up front to get change. You know, had to go up front to get change so I could use the drink machine in the break room. And I had a whole pocket full of change. Finally, they had to ask me to give some change back if I would, because I kept taking all the change. But anyhow, and it was then that I was introduced to Christ. Terry and I went on a date on Friday night. I asked her what she was going to be doing Sunday, and she said, if you want to see me, you're going to have to come to church. You're going to have to come see me there. And so that's how that all began to transpire. Fast forward to 2007. Now, after my divorce, I didn't get to see my children anymore. Sometimes in life, things just don't work out. Okay? It's just the way it is. Get used to it. In other words, like this, and the reason why I say that is because it took me some time. I say it real easy, but it's not easy. I tell people all the time, you know, if you really want to do something, wait till the sun comes up tomorrow morning and sit on it. Stop it from coming up. You can't do it. It's the same thing with things that happen in life. You can't stop certain things. It's just the way it is. I don't like it, but it's just the way it is. So with that thought in mind, fast forwarding to 2007, the next time I saw my son, I didn't get to see Jonathan, but the next time I saw Daniel, he was dead. He was killed in 2007 on February 14th, and he was a Marine. He was in Iraq, and he was killed while they were fighting. And so this was the first time I get to see him. Now, over the years, as Terry and I was married and things were going on, and she helped me through just a ton of stuff, and with a backlog of child support that I was behind on and all kinds of stuff, she helped me with all of that. People from church kept telling me, one of these days, the Lord is going to bless you with your children. One of these days, the Lord is going to bless you with your children. And that day never came. And it's not to say that maybe they wasn't right, but I was really riding a lot of false hope. I was really riding a lot of things that wasn't true. And so I held on to those for the longest time until 2007. And then I realized that wasn't going to happen. And my next oldest son, Jonathan, I've still never seen him. I have talked to him on the phone. I've texted with him some. But I guess to ever get together again probably will never happen. But anyhow, the Lord has blessed me with Tanner and Becca. So I get to start over again. And so, and it's been terrific. I say that to say this, that having met someone that started out like you're starting out. In other words, Terry started out like you're doing. She started out with a foundation, a basis from which to build on. As you move out of this world, you're going to run into two worldviews. One is going to say there is no God, atheism, or there could be agnostics, that don't believe. Maybe there is, maybe there isn't. But the point is, they've got nothing to lean on. There's no basis, there's no standard, there's nothing to fall back on. There's nothing there. Or you're going to have a foundation of Christianity, something you carry with you, something that bolsters and helps with everything you think and do. Everything that you plan on, you've got something to lean back on and say, here it is. I can do this because of this here. And I've seen other people doing it. I see other people living it. And so those things we can reach back for and we can hold on to. So fortunately, she's the person that really undergirds our family and has gotten me to the place where I'm at now so that I can discuss and talk about some different things. So, two attitudes in the world today: no shame and intimidation. Number two, do not let anyone decide the conclusion for your life. Number three, integrity. I had a lot of opportunity to do a lot of things when I was by myself. In other words, after my mother left, my dad took a job in Snowshoe, West Virginia. We lived in Grottoes, Virginia, which you probably never heard of. Maybe we'll never visit, but that's where I grew up. And so he would leave and I would stay home all during the week. There was a lady lived across the road and she would fix me breakfast before school and put me on the bus and so forth and so on. And so my dad kind of removed himself from the whole situation. And so I had opportunity to live life and do things without guidance, without any help. I'm fortunate. I'm fortunate in the sense that for whatever reason, I chose at that time to do opposite of my father. And so I found out by doing opposite of my father, I would be 90% right. I come home from playing baseball one evening, and I seen the police car. Bill Davies was the police officer's name, and I thought, yep, they finally got him. I thought, something's going to change. I'm going to move somewhere else. He's going to be out of my life. And this is why I'm still in elementary school. And so as I'm walking up the road, I see Bill Davies' police car, and I think, okay, all right, so here's what's going to happen. I walk in the house, and here they are sitting drinking liquor together. My dad was the kind of person, he could corrupt the uncorruptible, I guess if you would say that. Somehow or another, it didn't work out, but didn't escape that. Number four, I would encourage you to end better than you start. The reason why I told you my story wasn't for you to feel bad or think anything about it, but to realize that with God, you can end better than you started. I didn't think I was going to get through high school. I would be ashamed to tell you how I got through high school. It would just be, it would not be helpful. It'd be detrimental. But I got through high school. After I got through high school, of course I joined the military, but it was later on when I met Terry, and she was going to Harding University in Searcy, Arkansas. And I thought, I don't know, could I go to college? Could I do it? I thought, how in the world am I going to get into school? I always used to thank God for Sammy Easton. If it wasn't for Sammy Easton, I'd have finished last in my class. I used to joke about that all the time, but Sammy Easton was killed a few years ago along the highway doing some work, and so I feel bad about it now, but it's the truth. I mean, if it wasn't for him, I'd have finished last. But how am I going to get into school? How would I ever do that? I mean, here's somebody that has done construction work after the military. I worked in the Department of Corrections and all kinds of different things like that. And how am I going to get in? What's going to happen? And lo and behold, they had this program there that were for older people. In other words, not young like you that's getting ready to go into college or whatever, but somebody that, what was the word they used? More seasoned. That was the word they used, more seasoned. You know, in other words, huh?
Good word.
By that time I was 29. And so I ended up getting a bachelor's degree. I ended up getting into the program. I ended up getting a bachelor's degree in 2.5 years. I don't know if you know yet about degrees and stuff, but to get a bachelor's degree in 2.5 years is pretty good. I mean, that's fast paced. I went 8 hours a day. I took everything they could give me, and lo and behold, I made it, and I'm surprised at that. So through all of that, I've learned a lot of things in life. I've learned God can do some crazy things. I wonder sometimes why he messes with certain people. Why does he spend time on us? Why does he even think about certain people? You know, at that time I couldn't figure it out. So, you know, it's remarkable. I wanted to share a couple things with you just to lighten it a little bit about some things that I've learned. I've learned that practice doesn't make perfect. I've learned that perfect practice makes perfect. That you can practice something wrong all day long, but it doesn't mean you're going to do it perfectly. I'll tell you this way. I'll tell you how I came across that. After I got out of the military, somebody else was waiting for me. The Virginia Department of Correction. How they knew I was getting out, how they knew any of us was getting out, but man, they were ready to give me a job, so they gave me a job. And so I was going to work for a maximum security prison. And during the training for that, you do a lot of hands-on fighting and stuff like that. And so you have to carry batons. That's all you have when you're in the pods and in the yards and stuff. But anyhow, so we would use these these black tubes. You ever seen the tubes that they use? These came out like golf bags. You know, the tubes you put the golf clubs in. That's what they were. They'd cut those off, and they would whack you with them. And so the guy that I was training with was one of the instructors, and he was a 5th or something degree black belt. And he kept whacking me with that stupid black stick. And it really got on my nerves. And so we would train, and he would whack me. So finally he said one day, here, take one home with you and practice. So I took it home, I practiced, came back the next day, and he whacked me again. And so I asked him, I said, what am I doing wrong? I'm doing what you're doing. He said, if you're doing what I'm doing, I couldn't hit you. So we went back, he showed me exactly what, one little thing I was doing wrong. And it changed everything. And that was his mantra, that perfect practice makes perfect. You can practice all the time, but that does not make perfect. You can practice wrong all the time. You know, Tanner and I, we lift weights and stuff, and one of the things I've been trying to make sure that we instill is the process. When you're lifting, you know, do the form, do it right, because it'll hurt you. You know, if you don't care. Okay. So anyhow, so that's one thing that I've learned in life. Another thing I've learned, the 2 times to keep your mouth shut, is when you're swimming and when you're angry. You know, those are 2 good times to keep your mouth shut. Anyhow, so end better than you started. The last one is this. Don't quit. Don't stop in life with anticipation of failure in the future. So many people have failed their way into stuff. I don't know how many businesses I've tried or how many things I've tried and I failed. This is but another that I'm reaching out for and going to try something else to try to reach further and hopefully better myself and my family, along with the hospice chaplain. And so I keep trying. I've tried dozens of things and all kinds of stuff. But if I keep thinking about the possibility of failure, I won't do anything. I won't accomplish anything. And so I would just encourage you in those directions. Those are the points I kind of wanted to run down with you. Primarily the point is about the two attitudes, the two dispositions that run the world today. No shame and intimidation. Would you have anything to say about that?